The Tale of the Ratlantic. April 10, 1912. From the British port of Squeakhampton, the grandest ship enrolled in history set sail across the icy Ratlantic Ocean. It would be the largest moving construction that had ever been assembled by Rat. Her name was the Ratanic, and she was headed for the land of opportunity. New Rat City, built for both speed and splendor, Ratanic was a floating marvel, the pride of the Ratlantic line. She carried 4 funnels and was considered the unsinkable ship. But just 4 nights after her maiden voyage, she would be gone, taking over 1,500 lives with her. Even the richest rat in the world, J.P. Morgan Rat, held a first-class ticket. But on the day of departure, he mysteriously opted not to board the ship. He would survive, but most would not. Survival would depend greatly on gender, age, class, and of course, luck. Ratanic held over 2,200 rats, who were an elite mix of high society, middle-class dreamers, and hopeful immigrants seeking a new life, a new rat city. It was a vessel for all rats. She was divided into 3 classes. First-class rats. They lived in luxurious cabin, in upper decks, and had constant service. The second-class rats lived in modest, comfortable quarters with limited services. The third-class rats were cramped in spaces in the bows of the ships, below the decks, and were never really seen by the upper-class rats. It was designed that way. Regrettably, on the morning of April 14th, the very day the Titanic sank, the first lifeboat drill was scheduled and then canceled. Some speculate it was to avoid disturbing other rat passengers, or because Captain Rat felt overly confident in the ship's safety. Less than 12 hours later, they would face a nightmare far more real than any skipped lifeboat drill. Interestingly, the Ratanic had also received multiple iceberg warnings that very day prior to her doom. Some even reporting multiple dangerous icebergs directly in her path. But the ship pressed on at near top speed. Why? Well, to impress the world and arrive early in New Rat City. Unfortunately, at 11:40 p.m., just before midnight, on April 14th, the Ratanic struck a massive iceberg. 5 components were torn open. The watertight bulkheads meant to keep the ship afloat were quickly overwhelmed. She was designed to survive flooding in 4 compartments. She was now taking water in on 5. The iceberg was, in fact, spotted, but the Ratanic turned sharply to avoid a head-on collision. Nevertheless, it was too late. Unknowingly, the captain's order to turn the vessel had now created far more damage than any rat had ever designed the Titanic for. At first, there was little panic. After all, the Ratanic was unsinkable, wasn't it? The upper decks mostly continued on as usual, as the reality of the situation had not yet presented itself. However, in the lower decks, the dire consequences of the collision were rapidly in effect. The Ratanic carried lifeboats for only about half of her passengers and crew, and in the chaos, some were launched, only partially filled. There was no public lifeboat drill, no mass instruction. Rats relied on rumors, guesses, and panic. The rule, women and children first, was enforced, but unevenly and often influenced by class. All first-class rat children survived, whereas only 1 in 3 third-class rats children were lucky enough not to perish in the icy depths of the Ratlantic. Women and children first, although noble, meant if you were a male rat, there was an 80% chance you would die under the stars that dreadful evening. Boy rats, as young as 14, were also considered adult rats. 3 in 4 female rats went on to see the bright lights of New Rat City. Incredibly, that very night, just on the horizon, sat another vessel, the SS Californian Rat. But their wireless operator had shut off communications just 9 rat minutes before the Ratanic would send her SOS call. It was near midnight, and Captain Rat had gone to sleep for the night. Their cries of help would go unanswered. By morning, they finally did investigate, only to find debris, ice, and lifeless whiskers bobbing in the waves. At 2:20 a.m., the Ratanic broke apart and disappeared beneath the black water. Captain Rat remained at his post, vanishing with the bridge. Of the 2,200 rats aboard, only 705 survived. The rest, that's over 1,500, perished in the icy darkness. The tragedy of the rat tank was not just mechanical. It was rat, rodent, and preventable. Too few lifeboats, too much confidence, too much speed, too little preparation, and just 9 minutes of silence that cost over 1,000 lives. Today, all that remains is steel and bone, and the cold truth echoing through the deep. The moral of the story? Even the unsinkable can sink. In memory of the lost souls, at Ratanic, April 15, 1912.